Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a massive one, a debate that splits Dragon Ball Super fans right down the middle. BROLY versus Jiren.
Oh, yeah. The legendary Super Saiyan against, well, the seemingly unbeatable Pride Trooper.
Exactly. These two characters, they pushed Goku and Vegeta harder than almost anyone else. We're talking Ultra Instinct Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta levels of power needed just to deal with them.
They really represent completely different ends of the power spectrum, don't they? Different ideas of what strength even means in that universe.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive interesting. Our listeners send over some great source material, video breakdown, character wikis, and our mission today is to dig into all of it. What do these sources actually say about their origins, their powers, their styles?
And crucially, the big question, who wins? What's the verdict from this material if they were to actually throw down?
Right. And it's not just about power levels. The sources point to things like control, potential, their whole mindset.
It's a fascinating comparison. So let's get into it, dissect what this material tells us.
Okay, let's start with BROLY, the Dragon Ball Super BROLY movie version. Pure raw potential, unstoppable rage. What do the sources kick off with for him?
Well, they go right back to the start, the movie prologue stuff. King Vegeta seeing baby BROLY's power level.
Which was freakishly high, right? Higher than Prince Vegeta's even.
Way higher. So high it scared King Vegeta. Made him jealous, maybe. Anyway, he exiles the baby, sends him off to Planet Vampa.
Planet Vampa. The wiki description makes it sound like just the worst place imaginable. Giant bugs eating other giant bugs.
Yeah, not exactly a paradise.
Yeah.
And BROLY's father, Paragus, he follows him there, but purely for revenge against King Vegeta.
And they get stranded for, decades.
41 years, according to the sources, just stuck on this horrible planet.
41 years. And that relationship between BROLY and Paragus, the sources painted as super traumatic.
Definitely. BROLY's training was basically just surviving Vampa, dodging giant monsters.
And didn't Paragus, shoot BROLY's only friend? Some creature named Ba?
Yeah, the Vampa beast. Fearless. Paragus shot its ear off, apparently, just to keep BROLY isolated and focused on strength. Brutal stuff. And then there's the control collar.
Ugh, the electric collar. To shock him whenever his rage started to bubble up.
Exactly. A really cruel way to try and bottle up that immense power. It's a key detail the sources highlight.
So they're finally found, right? By Chilai and Lemo from the Frieza Force.
Yeah, they pick up his distress signal. And the sources mention Chilai's scouter just frying when it tries to read BROLY's power. Completely off the charts. Untraceable.
Which, of course, gets Frieza's attention. He hears powerful Saiyan.
And his ears perk up. Paragus tells him what happened to Planet Vegeta, and Frieza sees his chance. He figures he can use BROLY.
Use him against Goku and Vegeta.
And his plan is just awful. He realizes the key is BROLY's rage tied to his father. So Frieza kills Paragus right in front of BROLY.
Just to trigger him. To unleash that power full.
And it works. Man, does it work. The sources really emphasize this point. BROLY starts strong, sure, but his power isn't fixed. It grows.
Exponentially, they say. Every second he fights, every hit he takes or gives, he gets stronger.
We saw it, didn't we? He just demolished Golden Frieza for an entire hour. Just beat him senseless.
And pushed Goku and Vegeta, both in Super Saiyan Blue, to their absolute breaking points.
It took Gogeta, Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, the fusion, just to contain him.
And even then, the sources are pretty clear. Gogeta didn't decisively kill him. That final blast was huge, but Shenron whisked BROLY away right before it hit.
Right. So the sources break down his forms. You've got base BROLY. Then there's the Ikari, or wrathful form.
That's the one where he channels the Grade 8 power but stays human-sized, right?
Yeah.
First seen after Vegeta dunked him in that icy lake.
Exactly. Huge power boost without the giant target. Then Super Saiyan triggered by Paragus's death. And finally, that green-haired, full-power Super Saiyan state. The legendary form.
So strength, limitless potential, insanely fast power growth, pure ferocity, and stamina that just doesn't quit because it's fueled by rage.
He's like a force of nature.
Yeah.
A berserker whose power cap just doesn't exist.
But the weaknesses are just as huge. Zero control. He needs those emotional triggers. And when he's enraged, he's predictable, isn't he?
Totally. The sources say he doesn't fight smart. He just destroys everything in his path. Pure brute force.
The wiki adds some neat details, too. BROLY keeping Baz's ear as a reminder. Kind of sad, actually.
It is. Shows a glimmer of the person underneath the rage.
And Chilai crushing that remote. Great character beat for her.
Definitely. A little act of defiance.
Plus, those trivia bits, Frieza wanting to be just 5 centimeters taller, Bulma wanting to be 5 years younger, adds a bit of quirky flavor.
Little humanizing touches amidst all the planet-busting power. And Goku telling BROLY to call him Kakarot at the end. That acknowledgement of their Saiyan roots.
Yeah. It all paints a picture of this incredibly powerful being, shaped almost entirely by trauma and isolation.
Okay, so that's BROLY. Now let's switch gears, Jiren. Universe 11's Pride Trooper. The Wall. What do the sources tell us about him?
He's part of that hero squad, the Pride Troopers, protecting Universe 11.
But he's different. Very different. His power is described as just immense. But the key difference is the discipline, the self-control.
And the sources state he's one of the strongest mortals, period. Stronger even than Belmod, his god of destruction. That's a massive claim.
It really is, and his fighting style reflects that control. He starts off so stoic, almost unmoving.
Effortlessly deflecting attacks that would vaporize planets.
Right. And when he does attack, it's precise, overwhelming. He doesn't need flashy transformations, not in the same way. His power feels internal, like it comes from sheer strength and conviction.
We saw in the Tournament of Power, he dominated, just swatted away guys like SSB, Kaioken Goku, even hit with his time skip abilities.
He was such an obstacle that Goku had to break through to Ultra Instinct just to stand a chance.
And even mastered Ultra Instinct Goku. Jiren gave him a run for his money.
Oh.
It wasn't an easy win. Even then, Jiren was the final boss, truly.
So his strengths, based on the material, total self-mastery, incredible raw power, maybe more static than BROLY's, but huge. That energy nullification ability is a game changer.
Huge advantage, yeah. Plus incredible speed, those overwhelming pressure attacks. And his mindset, calm, focused. The sources call it superior for fighting.
But he has weaknesses too, mostly psychological it seems. His very rigid sense of justice, maybe underestimating teamwork initially.
And that deep-seated fear of losing. The sources mention it comes from his past trauma, losing his master and comrades. When he's pushed to the absolute limit, that fear can make him lose his cool, become almost savage.
Oh yeah, saw glimpses of that, didn't we? When MUI Goku was really pressing him, or when Frieza and 17 pushed him.
The wiki paints him as complex. Devoted to justice, selfless, lives to protect his universe. He didn't even want to join the Tournament of Power at first because it meant other universes would be erased.
Right, he captures villains, doesn't kill them. Very principled, stoic, quiet, observant.
But the sources say he can be surprised when someone actually challenges him properly, as Hip did, or Vegeta. He respects opponents who push their limits but stay true to themselves, like Goku.
Which is interesting considering BROLY completely loses himself.
Yeah. And the wiki mentions he can be a bit condescending when he's winning. A touch of arrogance there.
And that fear of loss driving him. It makes him vulnerable beneath the stoicism. The sources also mention his wish being a big motivator tied to that past trauma. Manga says resurrect his master. Anime frames it maybe a bit more broadly about strength.
But by the end of the tournament, the sources show he started to learn, right? About trust, about connection, some character growth there.
Definitely. So you have BROLY, raw, growing, uncontrolled power from trauma, and Jiren, immense, disciplined, controlled power, also rooted in trauma and conviction, but capable of learning.
Okay, this is the core of it then, head to head. How do the sources compare them directly? Let's use the video's categories. First up, raw power.
Okay, raw power. The sources basically say BROLY's power is terrifying because it's always increasing, limitless potential. Jiren's power is immense, maybe even higher initially, but it's presented as more fixed, more static.
So Jiren starts stronger, maybe, but BROLY catches up and surpasses him if the fight drags on.
That seems to be the consensus in the material, yeah. BROLY's whole thing is that escalating power.
Next, control and skill. This one seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, clear win for Jiren here. He's a master martial artist. Strategic, precise, total self-control. BROLY, as the sources repeatedly state, is just chaos. Brute force, not skill.
Okay. Durability and stamina. Both seem incredibly tough.
Unbelievably tough. They both took insane punishment. BROLY's stamina, though, seems endless because it's tied to his rage and power growth. Jiren did show signs of fatigue against MUI Goku eventually.
So maybe a slight edge to BROLY and just pure never-ending stamina.
Over the extreme long haul, the sources seem to suggest that yes, though Jiren's durability is top tier.
What about unique abilities?
Well, BROLY's main ability is that crazy power growth, plus his destructive energy waves. Jiren has a more varied toolkit, according to the sources. The energy nullification, his speed, those focused pressure point attacks. More versatile, more precise.
Jiren's abilities seem more tactical.
Exactly, more refined for actual combat.
And last category, mindset.
Broly's rage makes him predictable. Attack, destroy, get stronger. Jiren's calm focus is generally better for a fight. But, as we said, that rigidness can be exploited, and his fear of losing is a potential weak point under extreme pressure.
So Jiren has the better fighting mind. But BROLY's sheer unpredictability, due to lack of reason, is its own kind of threat.
Kind of, yeah. Jiren's better equipped mentally for a strategic battle, but BROLY just breaks the rules of strategy.
Okay, putting it all together. What's the final verdict from the sources? Who wins this clash of titans?
The core conclusion seems to boil down to this. Jiren's superior skill, control, and likely higher starting power give him the advantage right at the beginning.
He could dominate the early fight, maybe even shut down BROLY's attacks with that nullification.
Potentially, yes. The sources suggest he'd need to win quickly and decisively.
But there's the big if, isn't it?
That's the key factor identified in the material. BROLY's limitless potential. If Jiren can't finish him off fast and against someone who gets stronger with every hit, that's a huge ask.
BROLY will just keep powering up.
Exactly. He'll eventually reach a power level where Jiren's skill and discipline just don't matter anymore. Sheer, overwhelming, uncontrollable power would eventually eclipse Jiren's static, however immense, strength.
The sources point out BROLY was still getting stronger even against SSB Gogeta, someone leagues above Jiren, and Jiren doesn't have a fusion trump card like that.
Right, so the source's conclusion is, Jiren likely wins the opening rounds. But unless he scores a knockout blow very early, BROLY's escalating power becomes unstoppable. It turns into a destructive brawl that BROLY inevitably wins through sheer power scaling. Jiren's fighting against the clock.
Wow. So it's not about who is stronger, but who gets strong enough fastest. A race against BROLY's potential.
Pretty much sums it up. It's a fantastic contrast presented in the source material. The absolute peak of controlled power versus the embodiment of limitless, explosive rage.
Really highlights those different philosophies of strength, doesn't it? Control versus raw potential.
And how those characters evolve or are shaped by their experiences.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We have BROLY, whose potential kept rising even against Gogeta, and Goku even mused he could maybe surpass Beerus someday. Then you have Jiren, who started learning about trust and connection at the end of his arc.
So what does all this say about what true strength really is in the Dragon Ball universe, according to these character portrayals? Is that chaotic, limitless growth inherently better than mastered immense power?
Or perhaps is the ultimate path to strength less about the type of power and more about that journey of self-discovery, connection, and maybe finding balance?